Good afternoon and welcome to episode 3 of AkashaTV. It's great to have you. My name's Dave Padden. I'm the head brewer and founder here at Akasha Brewing Company. And I've got a very special guest with us today, Mr. Ben Malouf from Craft Cartel. Welcome, mate.
G'day, Dave. Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure as always. We've known each other for a little while, and it's good to have you on the other side of the microphone for once.
Yeah, it's a bit of a change, so I'm interested to see how it goes.
Yeah. I'm a little bit nervous having you here, to be honest. So anyway, we'll see how we go. Let's get on with it. I think the first thing we should do is pour a beer. So we've got the Innovation Series Blood Orange Goza in front of us today. We'll be talking about that a little bit later on, but it'd be rude not to get into it first.
Absolutely, couldn't agree with you more.
All right. I've been told to fill the glass right up. I can
right at the top. So talk me through this. Should we be talk to me about the best way to pour our beer? Because I've been reading a bit lately about different styles.
Probably not the way I just did it, but essentially I don't think you want to do the old sort of, in the old days just try and minimise the foam. I think it's important that we remember we do have some foam. Goes is a bit of a funny one because the head with all the acid, the head sort of goes away quite quickly. But where that foam is now is kind of what I aim to have, pretty much towards the top of the glass. Get it in the glass, the bottom of the glass first, and create the foam, and then top it up, sort of more down the side.
Because I've been reading a few things lately about some cicerones in the States that were saying that they really wanted to agitate the beer.
Yep. Yeah. So when you first go, it's a little bit like wine as well. You try and get it sort of moving around to get it all moving. But yeah. I think so. We certainly do agitate it first. So throw it in the bottom of a glass, depending on what it is. If it's a really heady style, a really highly carbonated style, might need to back it off a little bit. But get it all mixed together. Start to create that head first, and then top it up. So there you go.
All right, best beer in the world's the one you like, though.
Absolutely, the one in front of you right now.
Yeah. And this was free for me, so it's perfect.
Yeah, excellent. Right, well, tell us a bit about yourself, mate. Where have you been? How did you get into beer? All that kind of thing.
Okay, well, I kicked off in the liquor industry about 20 years ago. So my father opened a bottle shop in the western suburbs of Sydney. He's a doctor by trade, so it was like, obviously, it just went hand in hand. A doctor who loved drinking whiskey. Yep. So I guess from that point, that was my first job. I was stacking shelves, I was moving boxes.
From a very young age?
I was 18, of course. Okay. So, let's just go with that RSA. That's kind of where I started in the industry. And from there, it sort of evolved and developed to when I was at uni I was going to go travelling with my two best mates. And we were going to spend Christmas in New York and New Year's in London.
Yep.
And then September 11th happened in, what was that, 01?
01, yeah.
Yeah. And we thought, probably not the best time to go and spend, Christmas in New York and New Year's in London. So we go, I didn't go. About a year later, I had a bit of money left in the bank. So
from packing all the shelves at the bottom.
Yeah. Well, I didn't spend it drinking. Yeah. So I thought, what am I going to do with it? So I opened up a half bottle shop, half delicatessen down in Northmead in the western suburbs of Sydney. And that grew into 2 and 3, and then we sold them. And then I moved into the wine game. Yep. And I was lucky enough to then sort of do a bit of wine writing for the Daily Telegraph and do a wine show on 2GB, and it's been a bit of a journey. And I guess the wine industry's at maturity, I'd like to say. And the next thing that came through the industry really was craft beer.
So definitely a wine guy before a beer guy.
I was a wine guy before I was a beer guy.
Not a winer, wine guy.
Never wine. But there's just so many parallels and similarities, and I think that it's that's how I kind of got into beer. And beer 15 years ago wasn't around, right?
Yeah, well, not good beer anyway.
No, it was VB and Tui's and all that sort of fun stuff.
No, I was definitely a wine guy before I became a beer guy as well. A long time ago, I was got into a lot of older friends when I was sort of in my early 20s, and who were, sipping and spitting and doing all stupid things with wine. And so I learned quite a lot about wine. I was definitely into it. Had quite a wine cellar before, and around that time, the same sort of thing, right? I hadn't discovered what you could do with beer, so you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I think the wine industry, though, I think for me it was a little bit elitist.
100%.
And everyone used to pontificate about wine and body and length and tannin and structure, and who cares if there was malolactic fermentation? Nobody really cares.
Don't they though?
Oh, don't they?
I think they do care. But again, it's a bit like the beer world. It's just that sort of pointy end, isn't it? I think most of us just want to enjoy. We want a wine or a drink that we enjoy. Yeah. But let's just enjoy it and not get too deep into it, because it can really ruin the experience.
Yeah, it can. I think the beautiful thing about beer, though, and like wine, but I think the beautiful thing about beer is you can enjoy it on multiple levels. You know, from the uninitiated who just want something that tastes good, all the way up to people who want to talk about what side of the hill the hops were grown on, and you know what mood you were in when you actually produced that rubbish IPA that you were producing at the time. You know, but there's something for everybody, and I think that's part of the fun.
Yeah,
that's the fun part of the journey.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And what's your favourite? So getting back to the beer side, so obviously you spend most of your time at Craft Cartel these days. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Craft Cartel, we moved online about 3 years ago. So it was originally run out of the same bottle shop that my father bought years ago. We moved online 3 years ago to move into that more predominantly in that beer space. But I guess more generically in the craft space, because I think craft as an overall ideology is it's a really nice story.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions about that.
All right, don't jump ahead of myself.
Yeah, you're up in here, man. I can tell. So that's good. So before we jump into that sort of stuff, again, back to you. What's your favourite style of beer? What? And I guess this could change as well depending on the season and the situation. But generally speaking, what do you like to drink?
At the moment, I'm liking anything that's refreshing. So I'm liking gozes. I'm liking sour beers. I'm liking anything that I can go and have a hit of cricket and afterwards sit back and have 2 or 3. I like to enjoy the drinking experience, so I guess I'm probably a little bit different to a lot of craft beer people. I won't seek out that perfect beer every single time. I like something that's nice and what's the term? Sessionable.
Sessionable.
I like it to be sessionable.
Definitely is.
I'm on point.
But I always talk about the 2 schooner test, right? You know, there's some great beers out there, but you have, someone's knocked that over, but you have that much of it, and you go, that's really great. I really couldn't drink any more, and that can get a bit tiresome, I think. And it's nice to be able to have a few beers, not think about it too much. But at the same time, enjoy them.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to chat a little bit about how you think craft has changed in the last, let's say, 5 years. Obviously, from a retailer's perspective, I think that's certainly why we've got you here, is to get that sort of perspective on life. But how has it changed? In your, from your viewpoint?
Well, if I start off where our bottle shop was originally, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was your true blue beer and bourbon kind of store. People come in, they get their bottle of Jim Beam, they get their 6-pack of VB, they might get a bottle of Yellow Glen or something like that. Yeah, I know.
Wow, on a special night.
Hey, on a very special night. Yeah, when they were 2 for $20 though, it was just, But ever so slowly, you sort of started to see the introduction, and I guess the forerunner to the beers was the wines, and you started seeing different styles of wine, and people would start to buy them, and then you started to see pale ales, or you'd go and see something that was just a little bit different. I think that over the last 5 years in particular, there's been a real thirst for knowledge. People want to explore, people want to they want to push the boundaries of what they've tried before. They don't necessarily know what they want or what they like, but it goes back to what we were saying. That's the fun part.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know about you as a brewer, but you don't have to like every beer that you try.
No, absolutely.
And that doesn't mean it's a poorly made product. It just means that it's not necessarily.
I think it's like you've got to make mistakes to find your journey, but it's. We see, I guess there's almost like, and I know we kind of discussed this before we put the cameras on, but there seems to be different types of people on the drinkers side, right? So there's the new guys, and we're getting more and more of those, which is great as the industry grows. There's lots of those guys. There's the pointy end who are after the double milkshake, whatever, drinking half a can with their mate sort of thing, which is all great. But they're the sorts of people that you see.
And I think you've got to start building people up from the bottom though, right? You're never going to jump straight into something that's a 10% stout from wherever. It's just, you're not going to enjoy your experience in craft beer. So sessionable beers like this, like things that people could sit there and go, I probably wouldn't have ordered it to begin with, but it's not offensive, it's something you can sit back and enjoy. You certainly started to see this, what we call sort of occasional enthusiast, as we like to call them. But I think that the beautiful thing about the other end of the spectrum is that they push guys, probably like yourself, to be innovative and try different things and experiment, and everybody's going to make their way up the ladder, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Always up the journey. And you might stop at a certain point and say, well, you know what? Pale ales are for me.
Yep.
And that's it. I don't like stouts. I don't like sours.
Happy to stay there for the rest of my life.
I'm happy to stay there, and that's
Yeah.
perfect.
And maybe sort of delve into things. And I think we see that from a brewer's perspective, from a manufacturing perspective. We don't have to sell one beer, right?
Yeah.
We've got we've got 5 core range beers, and then we're also bringing out seasonals.
Yeah.
Usually twice a month. So we see, and each of those beers are different, and we will always, from our perspective, take a new drinker on a journey as well through those beers, and then maybe introduce them to something else. But
was it an interesting challenge for you? I mean, like I wouldn't have thought 5 years ago if you'd said to me you were going to make a gozer.
Yeah.
I would have gone.
Me personally?
Yeah, you personally.
Yeah, well, we're all still on the journey. I think it is a never-ending journey and this is there really isn't an end to it, is there? I think we see. I mean, sometimes we may go a little bit too far. I think we saw West Coast IPAs go a little too far a few years back, which is big. I mean, that's where I firmly sit in that West Coast IPA camp. But we saw things get a little bit too bitter and a little bit too big and a little bit too full on, where. And it almost gone the other way. And we've spoken about this in previous episodes about the difference between New England IPA and West Coast IPA, where it's gone almost the other extreme. But where I like to sit is somewhere in the middle.
But who dictates that it's gone too far? Like, is that consumers saying to you?
Oh, I think people. You start to know, and people start to say, you know what. And it's important for us personally. We have at the brewery we have our own tasting room, and that's a critical part of the feedback loop for us. Is to well, what do you think of that? You know what? I love your beers, but that was just a little too much for me.
Yeah.
And so that's a critical part. I think if we just had a manufacturing facility here and no feedback loop like that, or not talking to guys like yourself, we wouldn't know. So you're right. It's important. We do a lot of market research. There's various ways that we find out what people are doing. So getting back to what you were saying before, I think you're a really important part of that journey, particularly for the new beer drinkers, aren't you? So how do you find, in the old days, they'd walk into your shop and you could literally walk them around the store. How do you do that online?
It's tough. The biggest challenge I've always faced is how do you take what's a tactile experience, and it doesn't matter. Like, anything that's a product like this that's got so much flavour, it's the smells, it's the taste, it's the aroma, it's the glass, it's the friends, the experience. So I think it took us a long time to sort of work out how to explain that to people. I guess the beautiful thing about the beer industry is there's a lot of stories, and even when you look
100.
but there's so many interesting people, and it doesn't matter whether we support a lot of Australian breweries, like that's our focus.
Good, yep.
But you just look at the cans. Like you look at the weird and the wacky. Like, you'd never see that on a wine bottle.
Yeah,
you'd never
100%.
see that.
And that's what I've noticed with your website is we're seeing a lot more information. You can almost and people are staying. You can take them on that journey on the website as well.
But stuff like this is important, right?
Yeah.
Like and having good customer feedback. So we've got a customer service team that is happy to sit there and talk to people just about beer, and even if it's not selling them.
What a great way to make a living.
Yeah, well that's it.
Oh, you want to talk about beer? Let's settle in. Yeah.
You've sold 3 cases in 4 weeks.
That's right.
Don't worry about the bills; they're overrated.
No, that's right. No, that's great.
Yeah, so look, I think that's that's part of it. Educating certainly a big part of it, because it can be quite confronting. I mean, you walk into any craft bottle shop these days, and I mean we've got 700 different lines. Like, where do you start?
It's amazing, isn't it?
Like, where do you, and we haven't even like scratched. I think there's about 750 breweries in Australia now. I think.
Yep. About that. Probably even more now.
Assume that every brewery's got at least half a dozen SKUs. I mean, that's 4,500 beers. That's not to talk about the American imports, the European stuff that comes in. Like, it's an intimidating experience.
Yeah, it is.
And I think where the industry's found a really good level is, you talked about the weird and the wacky, and yes, that certainly has a part, but it plays a part in what we're doing and where it's going. But I think that, brewers and breweries are sort of starting to listen a little bit more to consumers and say, look, not everybody wants a peanut butter milkshake IPA.
Yep.
But they do want something that they can sit down on a Friday night and, take to a barbecue, or sit down and watch the footy, or not feel like they've got to explain themselves to the person who they're giving it to, not knowing whether they're a craft beer drinker or not.
Yep.
They just want to be able to sit down and
Just have a beer.
And have a beer. That's it. At the end of the day, that's it, right?
Yeah,
Like,
100%.
Yeah, it's about what we're saying about the wine stuff. It's like, we shouldn't try and make this bigger than what it is.
Yeah.
It's a fun industry. You should enjoy it. Does it taste nice? And is it worth the price that I paid for it? And if you answer yes to both those questions, well, it's a good beer.
Yeah, 100%. So back to that journey, taking, I guess, teaching our customers certain things. We had a partnership doing a course called, well, not even a course, it was called Beer 101.
Yep.
Invited people into the brewery, talked to the brewers about the beers, learn a little bit about how they're made, the stories, and we talk about these stories about the beer, and it really gave us an opportunity. It was incredibly popular, and that sort of thing's been running for years, whether it be wine, whether it be beer. But I think we've found that this is as popular as ever. What do you think that is?
I think it goes back to what we were saying about it being something in it for everybody. And what I've found most interesting about that night that we did, I think there was about 20, 25 people.
Yeah, we had to cut them off.
We did. We sold out really
full,
quickly.
yeah.
But there was everybody from the people who knew, who wanted to know, how many bitterness units there are in it, all the way through to people who I, worked with in some of my other stuff who just wanted to sit down and go, I've never been to a brewery.
Yeah, I've heard you rabbit on about it for years, and let's find out what this is all about.
What it's all about.
Yeah,
but, the ability to be able to walk through and see what's done, and, and people were asking you different questions, and some of them were about the hops, and some of them were about how do you actually make beer? Like what, just talk to me. Like where does it start? And watching it and being able to, watch the grain go into, right at the very beginning is where it starts, guys.
Yeah, it's just amazing. We had, and we had people right at the beginning of the journey, some in the middle and some towards the end, and they all loved it. It was great, and we will be doing more. So keep an eye on socials. All right, I'm going to have one more question for you.
Go.
Talk to me quickly about independence.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of conversations. I don't want to get too deep into it, but it is a part of the story right now, and it has been part of the story for a few years now. Many beers you'll see the Independence logo down there to show that this beer was made by an independent brewery. Does it still matter?
It's a bigger, you could do a
it's
whole
a big
show.
question.
You could do a whole show on that. Look, I think that there is first off, let me say, I think there's a place for every player in the game. And I think that we hear a lot about some of the larger players in our industry misrepresenting what craft or independent is all about.
Yep.
But they still play a role, right? Like they have been drivers of the passion for beer. So in one respect, you've got to pay a little bit of homage and say, well, if it wasn't for that, we might not even have an industry to begin with.
Yep.
That being said, I think that what we're seeing in our customers is people wanting to know more about the stories that we're talking about, and independent is massive.
Yeah.
It's not a multinational corporation. It's not somebody sitting there making decisions based on economics. I mean, and maybe that's a bit of a misnomer, right? Like every brewery has to make economic decisions every day of the week.
Yep.
Yeah, so there is always an economic piece, but when you sit down and you walk through a place like this, and your team, you've got a great team down here, but you meet them and you speak to them and you understand the passion for what they're doing. I think that's what resonates well with people, as opposed to sitting there saying, it's a recipe, it's like making cordial, it's going to be repetitious every single time. So they're important. There is a place for everybody, and I think people, need to sort of respect that.
Yep.
But, get out there and help support people who are trying to, they're doing it because they love it.
100%. And I think what you just said there is probably the biggest thing for me, is that we're doing this as a passion, not to make a dollar. God knows I'd be doing something else if that was the case. But I do, and I think you're also right to say that it doesn't matter to everybody. And I think, like everything, whether they're a beginner, whether they're an expert, whether they like independence, whether they don't, as long as we give the consumer the ability to see what is independent, I think is important. So
absolutely,
that's great. All right, let's keep it moving. I wanted to talk very quickly about the Goza.
Yep.
This is, again, it is pretty something a little bit different for us. We came out, this is our first beer of what we're calling the Innovation Series. I'll hold that up to the camera for everybody. It is available only in our tasting room. It's a very, very short run of stuff, giving the brewers a little bit of room to move and something a little bit different to what we might normally do. And we brew small batches, chuck it through the canning line behind us, and make it available in the tasting room and online. So it's, as you said, it's a very refreshing beer. It's probably, this will be, I think we'll need to brew this again going into summer. I think it'd be a perfect one sitting by the beach.
Would you use this as a test case? Like, would you know?
100%.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think our innovation series and our pilot, we used to call them pilot and seasonal series, are all about, we know what we like, but let's just make sure that everybody else likes it
And
as
what's
well.
the response been?
The response has been amazing for this. It's a really universally loved beer.
Yeah.
We've got, again, people on the beginning of the journey, the end of the journey. Everybody loves it. It's quite a technical beer to brew. It's a sour. It's a very traditional German sour. So it's based on a Gose, which is similar to a Berliner Weiss. So we have what we call a sour mash at the start of the process. So like a mash, like a normal beer, we let it sour using lactobacillus. Same stuff we've got in yogurt and little health capsules and gut capsules and things like that. Which all that does is normal yeast creates fairly neutral flavours, or the yeast we use anyway. That creates it creates a lot of acid essentially. So it brings that pH of the beer right down. And then once we're happy with that level of acidity, we can stop that process quite easily and then just brew it like a normal beer. So, but for this, a normal Gose would be that with it. We wouldn't do too much else. We'd add a little bit of salt, which we do in this beer, which is really quite an interesting concept. And coriander seed.
Yeah, right.
Which is, I don't know if you've ever cooked with coriander seeds. Nothing like coriander.
Yeah.
A few people have come in and said, "Oh, it's got coriander in it." I'll hate it. I hate Thai food, but it's a very citrusy seed. It's wonderful and just goes beautifully in this. And obviously we add the fruit, so the blood orange goes as
So
well.
where in the brewing process do you sort of inject those flavours?
It's all towards, so with the salt and the coriander seed, we add during the boil process. So before fermentation, essentially. So we've got the acid we want. We've put the flavouring in, except the blood orange. So you can get all sorts of Goses, all sorts of different flavourings, usually fruit derived. That goes right at the end of fermentation, almost towards the end. So we throw that in. That then has sugar in it, ferments a little bit, so it's not too sweet. But for me, it's a go-to beer at the end of the day. When if you've had a hard day, you want something refreshing, this is just amazing beer. I love it.
How do you sort of maintain consistency, like in terms of production, and then how does that sort of play into your, desire to want to be a bit more experimental?
Is this my radio show or TV show? So, look, it's a good question, and consistency is something that we always said. There's a few sort of pillars that we build our brewery on. Quality and consistency is one of those, and it's hard. The smaller you are, the harder it is, because but what we do is we develop the process quite early, and a lot of that is measurement. A lot of it is lab work. So we created our lab from day one of the brewery.
It's not nearly as romantic as it should be.
No, it's not. That's why I didn't ask the question.
Oh, right, sorry.
But it is important. So that next time, I don't forgot any beers behind us, but our flagship beer is our Hopsmith IPA, and hops they're a volatile product, and they're a bit like grapes in wine. They're different each year. But every customer wants, when they pull a Hopsmith off the shelf in whatever store anywhere around Australia, want to make sure that it tastes like a Hopsmith IPA. So we're just constantly measuring everything, from pH to sugars to final gravity, starting gravity. It's just measuring as much as we can to try and wrangle the yeast to do what we do, and we can control temperature very precisely throughout the entire process as well. So it's about taking measurements and acting on those. And one thing I've always said to my group of brewers, who are fantastic brewers here, is always don't take data for the sake of taking data. Take down a measurement of it and then think about, well, where is this headed? So we've got graphs on the back of our brew sheets which show this is where it's going to go, say a fermentation profile, and keep a very close eye on it. And we can manipulate yeast a little bit to make sure that we follow that.
Is there a point at which you just go, this is going to be a great batch, or reciprocally, nah, it's gone?
We know pretty early whether a batch is going to... If something's going to go wrong with a batch, it's usually pretty early. Unless it's a breakdown of machinery later on down the path, we know pretty quickly.
Oh, the old breakdown of machinery.
So, and consistency is key. We have a go, no-go parameters, essentially. So if it works outside of a certain... a measurement is outside of a certain range, then it won't go out. Simple as that. So not too often, thank God.
No, but it's all part of the process.
Yeah. So there you go. A little bit of scientific sort of stuff. But the lab's a great place. It's like being back in school. We've got all the Bunsen burners and the microscopes and the whatever else. But it's.
I don't know what school you went to, but there was no beer at my.
No, there wasn't any. There was no beer, but all the equipment in the lab was there. All right, let's keep it moving. All right, I just wanted to quickly, we're pretty much done, so I really thank you for coming down today. It's good to see you again, and good to have you on the other side of the table. And I just wanted to remind our viewers that about the competition that we're running at the moment. It's called A Brewer for a Day. It really is a unique opportunity. No, you can't enter, just in case you're wondering. A unique opportunity to spend the day with us, brew a beer that you can work with us, even on the recipe, what that beer will be. Come back in a few weeks' time, we'll package it, you can take some home, show your friends, take them down the pub and grab a couple of schooners off the tab. It really is a unique and exciting opportunity. So all we want you to do is send us an email to beer@akashabrewing.com.au. Let us know why you should be the person, and we'll leave that up for about another month or so, and then we'll choose the winner. Really exciting competition, so really think you should enter. Quick audience question before we wrap it up from Steve. Steve-O, of course. Really enjoying the show. Thank you. I have a question for Dave. Here we go. What is your favourite hop at the moment? Tough question. Yeah, drum roll, please. At the moment, still sitting Sabro for me.
Top of the pops.
It just keeps blowing me away, this hop. The complexity. If you had a Sabro beer, you would have had.
What was the one that you did?
Good answer. Yeah. We did a single hop Sabro IPA. Just recently, and it's actually coming again. So, but it just really is it's got your typical. We use a lot of US hops here. It's what we like to use. Those citrus tropical sort of flavours that come out of many of them. It has that, but then it has this other complexity to it, like coconut, and all these just complex flavours. And what we're finding is as it ages and some of those tropical flavours sort of are starting to go away after a few months, we're finding it's not like it's a different beer, and just as enjoyable. I think it's just a wonderful hop to play with. We're going to be playing around with mixing it with some of the other hops that we use over the next few months. But that's still my favourite hop at the moment. Mosaic is always there nudging it, but we've spoken about that before. But definitely Sabro at the moment. So if you do see any Sabro beers out there, jump on them. We are releasing this. It was so popular. We actually did a small batch of it. It was that popular. We're going to do it we usually wouldn't do it for another year. We're going to release another batch in about a month's time. So keep an eye out. All right. Well, thank you for listening. Don't forget, you can get again over this weekend 5% off by using the code AkashaTV5. Did you have anything you wanted to?
Yeah, if you want to jump on Craft Cartel Liquor, so it's craftcartel.com.au.
Thank you.
Why don't we give a $20 voucher off any Akasha product? So just spend $70.
Beautiful.
And on Akasha products.
Yep.
And I'll give you $20 off and free shipping. How's that?
Oh, thanks.
Winning.
Sorry for dropping you in that in the last second. But thank you for doing it. I'm sure our customers will appreciate it. Thank you all again for tuning in, and we really look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.